Or you may be lucky like me and are in.
Sorry. No, keep going. That was so good. No, you're not redoing it. That was so good.
You're supposed to be quiet.
And then we run into each other at the grocery store.
That's exactly what I wrote.
Exactly.
That I'm delighted to run into at the grocery store, Summer.
Yes, because we are locals. Kayla,
right.
You nailed it. No, you don't get to do it again. That was so good.
We're going to use this as outtakes. All right. Do I have to start from the top then, probably? Welcome to OverHerd at Deer Valley. I'm your host, Kaylin Richardson. I am a two-time Olympian pro skier, and for the past 10 years, I have called Deer Valley my home mountain. Here I'm going to chat with different leaders, heroes, and characters about what they believe makes the Deer Valley difference. There's a saying in Park City that when you move to town, you come for the winter, but you stay for the summer. We'll have to test that out with our guest today, the iconic Summer Sanders. You may know her as the competitive swimmer that became a world and Olympic champion before she was 20 years old. Or you may know Summer as the beloved TV personality over the last 25 years, from co-hosting NBA Inside Stuff to hosting Nickelodeon's Figure It Out. Or you may be lucky like me, and you can call Summer a Park City local, and you are delighted whenever you run into her at the grocery store. Summer, you've had an incredible journey as an athlete, and you've done such unique things post-athletic career. How did you land in Park City? I think I know, but I've never heard it from you.
Oh, this is such a good story. Well, first of all, I'm born and raised in Northern California. Journeyed through San Francisco, LA, post-college, went to school at Stanford. And then I loved the mountains, so I lived on purpose in Colorado for a little while. But people would always say, what are you doing in Colorado? And I'd say, I'm just living, because I would just fly out to all my different stuff. And then I got a job in New York City. So I lived in the city of Manhattan for 10 years. And then I went on a blind date to an event that you know well, which is called the Ski Ball. And I went with this guy named Eric Schlope, and that was kind of it for me. We both weren't looking for anything serious, but he was a ski team guy, 3 Olympic Games, 18 years on the World Cup, and he was living in Park City, Utah. And for me, I loved New York City, but I knew I wanted to have kids. And I also was very aware of how hard you had to work to earn a living to raise kids in New York City. And that just didn't seem like a balance that I was willing to take on. So, things moved quickly, and he said, do you want to move to Park City? And I'm like, yeah. I feel like I could live anywhere, but I really do feel like I kind of hit the jackpot living where I do.
So Eric brought you here.
Yes.
And that's I think I knew it was a blind date, but I wasn't. I'd heard other rumors. I won't even go into it, but I'm so glad to hear from you that it was. Who set up the blind date?
It was my agent, and I call him my friend. He's younger than me, which is like almost everybody's younger than me now, but in the business, as we say. So Lowell is his name.
I know Lotab.
Yes, and so Lowell was Bodie's agent as well, and Bodie and Eric were both asked to come to the ski ball.
To date you. They were both asked to.
No. They were asked to come to the ski ball, and so when the ski team was like, okay, we're going to get you to the ski ball, now they're like, okay, we need a date. So they looked to Lowell, who lives in Jersey, in New York City. And Lowell was tasked with finding both Bodie and Eric a date. So there are versions of this story. Bodie has one, but we all know this is how the story went. Lowell said, okay, you're going to go to this event with Bodie Miller. And I was like, I just broken up with my boyfriend. And I'm like, I don't know. Okay, let's go.
He has a bit of a, I love Bodie, and also like he's an individual and he's a great guy, no matter what you hear. But I can understand that had you never met him, there are things you'd probably heard that you're like, post breakup, that might not be what I need.
Might not be the best to walk into, but it would have been fun. So in the end, Lowell's like, you need to have fun, get out, go. And I said, all right. Then Lowell went home and spoke to his wife, Becky. And Becky said, no, Summer is perfect for Eric. So it was nothing bad about Bodie. It was just Summer and Eric are perfect for each other. So really I have Becky to thank, because she was the one who navigated. So Lowell then, at that time, I think I had like the original version of a BlackBerry, and I get this message saying, your plans have changed. You're going with Eric Schlope. And I'm like, okay, great.
Women's intuition.
Yeah, thank goodness for Becky.
Thank goodness
she
for Becky.
She gets all the credit.
So fast forward. pretty quick courtship, love it.
Yeah.
You land in Park City. What was your first impression? You know, you'd moved here with this guy. He was a Park City local. It's always, I feel like it's sometimes easier to move as a couple someplace new together, but you are entering his world, like in every way. And obviously you've had a couple things that you've excelled at. So was there any kind of, not ego-based, but just like, it was a totally new world that you were entering into?
It was a totally new world. And so, okay, it was 20 years ago and I'm 51 right now. So I was coming out of anybody who's lived in a big city, single or otherwise, and if you're working in industry of any kind, I hope I speak for every woman out there who's had this experience. Your bond with your girlfriends is tight. And so I had my industry girlfriends, we would get together. I had my lifelong girlfriends, we would get together. And I wasn't leaving that, but I was leaving an aspect of that because I would go back to New York and work and I knew I'd have that. I get excited about new cities. I get excited about moving and experiencing new things. So for me, I had been to the Olympic Games in 2002, working for the Today Show, which I know we're going to talk about later. So I'd seen Park City and I had a sense of what it was all about. And I had lived in a mountain town before in Colorado. So I was like, wherever you are, Eric, seems like it's home to me. And it takes me a while though, to make my girlfriends, to make my place. And that was something that I know Eric kept saying, oh, well, you should go and meet this person, or you should go meet this person. And I was like, listen, I go on a blind date with a guy and I fell in love with you and you are my person. But it takes me a little bit longer to find my girlfriends. And my girlfriends here are like as thick as blood. We are as tight as you can be. We have been through so much together. And I'm very, very grateful for that time that I took to find my place in this wonderful city.
Here in Park City, what's your favorite thing to do with your girlfriends?
Oh, running and hiking in Park City is the absolute best. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I went straight, I hung up my Speedo and I went straight into my running shoes. Been running in my Sauconys since that day when I turned 20 years old. And there's no better way to see a city or experience a city than through either your running or walking shoes. And I have these wonderful girlfriends who know all the trails and like to know all of the trails. So they are my mental Sherpas when I'm running. And I am still a swimmer, Kaylin. I have size 11 running shoes. So when I'm running on these trails, my eyes are looking straight down because inevitably I trip. I'm always tripping. And everybody's
flippers.
They're my flippers. And then I'm taller than most of the girls in the group. We have one other girl, Lisa, who's as tall as me, but they'll always be like, Summer, watch the branch. So they're telling me not only to put my eyes up, but watch for roots on the bottom. And so, yeah, it's hiking, it's running. I mean, I love being on the ski slopes in the summertime, just hiking through those trails.
You talked about your children and wanting to raise them, not in a big city like Manhattan, for many reasons. It's a great city. Raising them here in Park City, what are the activities and also just this community as being a concentration of so many elite athletes? I always joke that if you throw a stone in Park City, you are likely to hit an Olympian. Has that connected you more to the community, and how has that sort of informed the way that you've raised your children here?
Oh, that is such a good question, and it's quite complicated actually to answer. So let me just say again, it's not that I didn't want to raise kids in the city. I loved the city so much. I just knew I didn't want to have to spend so much time away from my kids, earning a living to raise them in the city.
The barrier of entry is so high there to live and to live
in
well.
My brain, it was. I never went into any of the public schools in Manhattan. That's where my kids would have been if I had stayed there. And I know that there's some that are really, really good. And I loved the city. And so I said to Eric, hey, listen, I have no problem being in Park City, but I do realize it is quite a bubble. So my kids have to experience outside of this beautiful, serene landscape that we are surrounded by. So we would go to the city, to New York City all the time. They had to experience that. And so they were very lucky to be able to do that. What I love about raising my kids here, and I do love the fact that our city has grown so much that there used to be such an emphasis on on winter sport activities. I just drove by Treasure Mountain, junior high and high school area, and they were doing cross-country skiing as a part of their PE. And they do that at Ecker Hill as well. And I think that that is so extraordinary. And when I say that to kids who grew up in California or non-snow towns, they're like, are you kidding me? You do cross-country skiing as PE? That's unbelievable. So to have that exposure to winter sports is really great. But the way our town has grown is, I'm sure that you can recognize this. When I moved here, there was no water polo team. There was no lacrosse team. So all of these different influences, and when I say influences, they're parents that have moved here that have said, I love my sport so much, I'd like to start this here and expose these amazing next generation athletes to new sports so that they can see that there's a possibility, even though snow sports are amazing and winter sports are unbelievable, that the summer sports have a place here in Park City. And I've always said to people, just buckle up. Pretty soon we're gonna have a summer Olympian out of Park City. And I'm sure we already do, maybe I don't know, like mountain biking or something. I have no idea, but if not, it will happen.
I completely agree. So as Park City has become a more well-rounded community as far as sporting, avenues, what about you? Like when you lived in Colorado for a while.
Yeah.
How have you embraced the winter? I mean, you're married to a Winter Olympian.
I know.
You're in this mecca of winter sports.
Yes.
Oh, no sign. There's no wrong answer. Don't think I'm gonna judge. There's no judgment. I'm just saying, like, are you still a Summer Olympian girl at heart, or have you dabbled into the dark side of winter sports more?
I love the first snow. When I see that first snow, I have to say, I have PTSD from last winter. I know everyone is like, that was the winter, like that was so amazing. Can't we have another winter like that? I don't want another winter like that. Like coming up here to Deer Valley, we're in Deer Valley right now, and coming up here to the Empire residence, I would be claustrophobic last year if I drove up here. The snow, the berms that were on the side of just getting up a road. I don't need that kind of snow. But I do love the first snow. And then I'd really love for it to turn spring at the end of February.
You like to ski Deer Valley when it's warm. You can take a couple runs and then get a cocktail. There's a new bar up above Royal Street, Sticky Wicket.
Oh, that's cute.
You gotta bring your girlfriends there.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Here's my philosophy on skiing. I have a really nice philosophy on skiing. I grew up just down the hill from Tahoe. And I grew up with a dad and a mom who, my mom mostly didn't have a lot of money. So the value of our dollar was one of our greatest learning lessons was, this is a lift ticket to a day of skiing. We get every dollar and cent out of it.
My parents were the same.
Yeah. So we would leave our house at like 4:30. We'd be carrying our skis on the side of the highway. We skied Sugar Bowl. That was the closest nice hill that we skied. And we would stay there till 4, and then we'd be in the masses driving down. Living here in Park City is just a different way of skiing. We do go out and get our yearly passes, so I never feel like I have to ski all day. Eric and I will do date mornings or date afternoons. Specifically, Eric will now do date afternoons with our daughter Sky, who's a senior in high school, and they get out so early that they'll just meet and go skiing for the afternoon. So now our ski day is turned into a ski couple hours, and it's more like how many days are you skiing a year to warrant your ski pass, right?
It's more recreational than compulsory, where you're we have to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the way I was raised skiing. Now it's just a different version of that, and I really like this version a lot better. So to that point, I am that person who's like, you know what, I'm good. You guys go out for like 5 more runs. I'm done for the day. Even if it's like 2 or 3 runs, I'm totally okay with that.
That is wonderful to hear, because I think I can make the leap that you have a competitive spirit. Yet when it comes to a different realm, you're like, no, this is just something for me to enjoy, that's for myself and for my family to do together. But thinking about you as an Olympic champion, as someone that dedicated so much of their early life to a singular pursuit, how much has that sort of laid the groundwork of your choices professionally and personally as you moved into broadcasting, parenting, just anything that you pursued, because you were done with your athletic career really young, but you'd already had a lifetime of work put into one thing.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I realize it's hard to retire from your sport. because we're saying we're retiring in our 20s, right?
Right.
I mean, that's
and people are always like, oh, wow, where are you going, to Boca? Like,
Yeah,
I'm always like, no,
like, no.
retired is something you can say for niche sports in the Olympics to make it sound better than quitting.
Yeah, exactly. But really, it was great because I knew what I wanted to segue into. I had equal passions at the same time. I do talk to a lot of athletes, current athletes right now, and remind them that it is possible to be great at two things at once. And I think that is a different mindset than from when I was raised. It was all in, all or nothing in this one thing. So I try to get them to think about what is next. That's not going to take away from the now. You can still be amazing and be great. But just thinking about what the next passion might be might help you swiftly and smoothly move into that next thing. And that was me. I knew I wanted to work in television for as long as I knew I wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. So it was, I was like, okay, I'm done swimming. I knew I was done swimming when in the middle of the 50-meter pool, it was still dark out in the morning practice at Stanford. He had given us one of his many like killer workouts. And I said, why am I doing this? And that was the first time in my life I'd ever said, why am I pushing myself? And so then I knew I was done. And so, I went on into television and it did drive me, that singular focus, for a very long time in my career. And then, I don't know if it was, I sort of blame things on turning 50. It's just this beautiful mentality of, I'm really actually not that competitive anymore. I'm really fine with other people beating me.
Well, you've been to the top of the mountain, Summer.
But Casey,
you have nothing to prove.
I used to so I lived in New York for so long, as I've said, and I'd run that Central Park Loop. And I would find myself casually passing men, and this is late 90s, early aughts. I would be casually passing men, and then they would in turn like pull a calf muscle to pass me again. And then I would be like, why are you doing this? And so then I would bust a lung to pass them one final time. And I just don't do that anymore. My 6 miles that was in my 30s is now a 4-mile run or maybe 3. So there's a different focus mindset now, but it did drive me quite a bit when I was in my 30s, my 20s and 30s.
But you did your part. There's phases of life, right?
Yeah.
When you passed those guys the second time, you basically were silently yelling out, well, I can't use this word on podcast, but like, you're down with the patriarchy. Like,
I was not silently. I was like, I'm like, oh, nice try. I mean, I was enough
I'm saying what I would have wanted to say. I won't say this is a family podcast, but there's things that I'd like to say because there's no place for that, like that kind of machismo. And luckily, like I feel like we're in a new era where like the male and female are celebrated for the spectrum that it is.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch upon what you talked about in that you can excel at two different things.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a friend of mine when he was going through retirement, a former ski racer. And I was kind of the same as you, where I always had so many interests that I've been on panels about transitioning, and I'm always the odd one out because it wasn't, of course there was hard parts of it, and it's maybe because I didn't have as much success. So hearing from someone that has had a great amount of success in their athletic career, it's refreshing. But for me, I always said I was excited about what was next because I knew what that life was like. And I even knew what was required to be at the very, very tippy top. And I just didn't have that desire anymore to try to get there. So I was so excited about what was next. And I still loved to ski. So I was like, there's more I want to do. You get one life. So I always tell athletes, I'm like, there's so much to discover. And I remember talking to my friend and he said, all my eggs are in this basket. And he was terrified.
Oh.
And I just said to him, I said, you are so talented. And all of this that you've gleaned from your lifetime of work is going to lend itself to whatever you want to do next. You just gotta go find it. But if you just stay static and afraid, I'm like, that's just wasted time. And time is the most precious currency we have.
Well, and it's hard for some people. There's some brains where, and I don't blame them. I've seen people where, you come from an Olympic level in one thing, and people will say to you, the world's your oyster, sea of opportunity. And that sea is vast. And the concept of having to go somewhere else and start at the bottom to work your way up, there are a lot of people that can't fathom it, and they drown a bit in that sea of opportunity. So I get it. I get that there might be so much. And so having all your eggs in one really safe basket might lend itself to that personality. but busting out and remembering what drove you in the very beginning was standing at the start or standing on the blocks or standing at the free throw line with the game on the line, and not being afraid of the outcome, either success or failure. And if you can try to get yourself back to that and that feeling, it's such a vulnerable state, but yet something people, I think, no matter what stage of life, whether it's your 7th career or your 1st career, people have to start getting more comfortable with that, being that vulnerable, because that's such a beautiful point of growth.
Totally.
And if we're not growing, we're stagnant. And there's nothing worse than being stagnant.
I couldn't agree more. And what I always tell people, the only thing you have to fear is entitlement, because you know how to work.
Yeah.
Like anyone that's made it to the Olympics or to the highest level, regardless of their personality, they know how to work hard.
Yeah.
There are those outliers, but most know how to work hard. I'm like, have confidence in that.
Yeah.
Like bet on that.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because this has become a bit of a conversation lately. You know, people talk about the fear of failure, which I think is very real, but there is also this fear of success. And when do you have success? And when are you comfortable having success? Because, you know, once you have success, you got to keep having success.
Scariest place to be is to be knocked off the top.
So sometimes, right? And so really getting at the root of who you are and being, I don't know, it's like the courage and the guts to understand yourself that way is very difficult for a lot of people. And I'm speaking to 14-year-olds and I'm speaking to 55-year-olds. This is just something that we can all sort of start to talk about just a little bit more. You know, it's a fun stage of life to be where I am right now. I have my job that I get to do and I dabble in and stuff like that. But I do feel like I'm almost at that point too, where I'm like, what else do I want to do? Where do I want to maybe start at the bottom or go learn something new and figure myself out in a totally different way? And that excites me, similar to moving here to Park City and not knowing anybody except for my husband.
And what's so cool about your journey is that you're able to parlay your swimming into broadcasting and you still get to be a part of that world. Paris is coming up.
Yes.
You're going to go.
I'm going to go. Yeah.
Which is amazing. So first, I have 2 different questions and you can pick whichever one you want to do first.
Okay.
What is the biggest difference that you have witnessed between the winter and summer games? Mm-hmm. And then also when we're watching, because I don't want to forget this one, because I think I love asking, especially gold medalists this, mm-hmm. What should we be looking for in swimming, probably, but any other sport mm-hmm. that we wouldn't necessarily as viewers pick up on that you will? Is it their face on the block? Is it a routine that a swimmer maybe does, or any athlete? Because I remember the first time I really watched myself after I was done competing, I saw they did a close-up of my face before I went down a downhill race. And I barely recognized myself because I don't ever look in the mirror when I'm completely concentrated in that flow state. And I always tell people, I'm like, if the broadcast allows, which most of the time it doesn't, because it's always fast-paced, if you're ever at a sporting event, that little moment before they compete, look at that, because that singular focus is such a cool thing that our species can do and something should be celebrated. But anyway, I digress. But I'm just saying, what would you say we should watch? And then the differences between summer and Olympics.
Okay, I'll do the easier one, which is the summer and winter games. Summer games is just winter games times 1,000. It's just so many people, so many events, so incredibly hot. You know, you're walking constantly. I am not exaggerating when I say at an Olympic Games, on average, I walk upwards of 16 miles a day. 16 miles a day, and you don't even know you're doing it. So there's that. And the chanting and the patriotism for your country is off the charts. But the Winter Games and the way the Norwegians they paint it, they wear it everywhere, their flag, their colors, the schnapps is flowing or the glühwein or whatever it is. The way the countries cheer for their athletes in the Winter Games is exceptional compared to the Summer Games.
Maybe because it's smaller culture, it plays a part a little bit more, because I think when the Summer Games comes in, it takes over cities so much that you can still get a flavor for the city, but it's maybe in the winter and this is just, I've been to one Summer Games, but just for like a day, is that what I took from the Summer Games is I was like, and also even any Olympic Games, people are like, I worked for the Weather Channel at Sochi as their special correspondent, which was an awesome gig for the first Olympics after I retired. Because I still knew everyone and it was low stakes, fun job.
But the weather is going to be rainy.
Well, no, I did all this research summer, all this research. And I like knew about dew points and all kinds of things. And I met with Al Roker beforehand because I was going to be on Wake Up with Al. And I'm sure you guys know one another from the Today Show. And I remember Al was very kind. He sat and he listened. And then at the end he goes, this is great. You can leave it at home. And I was like, what? And he's like, he wasn't trying to downplay the audience, but he just said, we just want to keep it fun and like layman, just the simplest way of helping people enjoy the sport more about how the weather comes into it. And I was like, I remember I felt like throwing up all my notes and being like, this is going to be awesome.
It's a party. It's a Weather Channel party in Sochi. I wish I had seen you on that. I would have loved to have watched you talking about the rain. Yeah. Working a Summer Games is totally different. Your IBC is different. The IBC is the International Broadcast Center. It's where all the broadcasters come together and the world is there. So just imagine that on a Summer Games.
I know, because it's big in the Winter Games. I can't imagine how massive it must be for the Summer Games.
It's just massive. It really is huge, which is good and bad. So there are goods, like I always say to people, experience the Summer Games at least once in your life if you can. If you're an Olympic fan, right, and all you've done is gone to Winter Games, please just go to one Summer Games because it's amazing. And and then the other question you had was looking at people.
Just something, or just anything that you're like insider tip where you're like, hey, this will make it.
People always wonder about swimmers and why we exert so much energy behind the blocks, right? Michael Phelps did that like slap with his, remember it's like I can't really do it here, but the wingspan where he'd slap his hands behind his back. That does nothing. It serves no real purpose. It's just either ritual, superstition.
Primer.
Yes. I mean, ideally, we would be very similar to the sprinters of the 100, where they just stand behind the blocks and they're visualizing something. But, swimmers, we're in our bathing suits. We're standing on sometimes a cold pool deck because it's an indoor venue now. So we're just trying to keep it loose. We're doing stuff like that.
What was your ritual?
I really didn't I did one thing where when I'd get on the blocks and I'd stand, I don't know if you can still see me here, but anyway, I'd stand on the blocks and I would pull my elbows back twice. And then I would just do that.
That's it. Yeah, that's like you flip the switch.
Yeah. And then you'll always see them doing this with their goggles. And that's authentic because I don't care how long you've been swimming, there's always the fear that your goggles are going to fall down.
Oh, fogging. So I'd never made that connection. I have a kinship with swimmers. I never even knew. Before you go down a downhill, you're going to go upwards of 80 plus miles an hour. If your goggle even has a teeny little fog in the corner, you start to you're just like, put it out of your mind. But it's crazy what can happen.
Why are you looking at that when you're going 100 miles per
hour?
hour?
Before you're in the start gate.
Okay.
So when they're tapping their goggles,
yes,
sometimes if you go in the tent and sometimes someone falls and they'll be like, race hold. Yeah. And you're like a racehorse, right? Same thing where you're priming yourself and you start to notice a little fog creeping because you're starting to sweat or whatever. You're just like, no. You take but then you're hard because sometimes you take your goggles off and people breathing will get up in. So I can get you're just get me in the water at that point.
Fogging isn't a problem for us. It's that literally, it's just that.
To keep them on.
It's if they fill up with water.
But just having to deal with something around your face.
Yeah.
I don't think that there are as many sports. I know bobsledders the same thing, with their shields.
And now swimmers wear two caps. So they'll wear a cap and then they put their goggles on and then they wear a second cap.
Because I remember that one terrible
security cap, we call it.
That's a good lesson in lots of life.
The other thing I like to encourage people to do at a Summer Games, or any games specifically, is yes, we get caught up in the people winning the gold medals and even the people who are in the finals, right, that possibly have a chance at podium. There are so many beautiful stories in the Olympic Games of people representing their country on a whole different level than we will ever know, that are going to get nowhere near the final. But just showing up at the start is sort of their Olympic gold medal moment. And so, yeah, it's fun to listen to those stories and to get to know the refugee team and to understand their journey and where they how they came to this moment. I think that's just such a beautiful part of Olympism.
The stories from the Olympics, I think, are the best part. I remember in my first Olympic Games in 2006, the holding area before the Parade of Nations, there was an electricity in the air that was palpable because every single person there wanted to be there. And to me, that's the Olympic spirit, more than any kind of medal around your neck.
And that sound right there is the spirit of a working area at Empire Residences.
Nice.
We are here, it's a Monday, people are moving, they're doing their things, and we're going with the flow.
Yeah.
That is also an Olympic attitude.
True.
I never walked in the opening ceremony.
Oh, was
Swimmers-
your event was early?
My event was the first day. I was the 400 individual medley. But I know that sense of intensity and purpose and it collectively building as a whole, as if you're beating in one heart. And I can imagine that that's what it was like. I remember I ran the Boston Marathon and it was a bucket list event for me, and I'd qualified. So I was in my little chute, they call it. It's like, what time you qualified with. And I remember thinking, I was looking around and I was really emotional because, my kids were like in their, 8 to 6 range, and parents seem to get really emotional in that range. And they weren't there with me. And this was 2013, if that year means anything to you. And so I was at the start and I looked around and I was like, where are all the pacers? Every marathon has those flags with the times, and I'm a 4 hour marathon pacer. And then it hit me, oh my God, there are no pacers because everyone goes to a marathon to pace to qualify for Boston. But we'd all already qualified. And so similarly, and this is how I like to draw it into people who might not ever get the chance to be an Olympian or get to that level, there are moments in life where you collectively can come together like that. And then, of course, the end of that Boston Marathon 2013 certainly brought a city, a nation, but intensely the running community together after the bombings in Boston. So that's the parallel that I would say is I never had that opportunity to walk, but I walked in closing, which was really fun.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I just love that USA on my swim cap and my swimsuit. There's nothing that makes me more proud. I love those Olympic rings. I still believe in them with my whole heart, and I love watching the games.
You did get to stand on the top of the podium with 3 teammates. So that must have been pretty cool as a shared experience.
It was, except for I didn't get to stand. I swam in the morning, so I didn't get that evening. No, but I did stand by myself up there. And when I say that, Caitlin, I know that I was an individual sport, but I can tell you exactly where everyone on my team was sitting in those stands. And I went back, we lived abroad in Spain in 2018, 2019. So I forced the kids to go with me to Barcelona to see my moment. And so we went to that swimming pool and I said, here's where the award stand was. This is where the podium was. And all of my team was right there. So I stepped up on my gold medal moment and I looked to my left, and that was my entire Olympic team. And I was 19, as you said in the very beginning, that I was not yet 20. And I had given up sweets for like the 5 weeks leading up to the Olympic Games, and I love my sweets. And so I looked up in the stands and my friends had candy bars ready to go for me. So as amazing as that moment was, it was still just a really pure, personal, not overwhelming moment in that I tried to absorb everything, including the fact that my friends were experiencing it with me.
And that just illustrates you were a kid.
I was a kid. I was
Candy
a kid
bars.
with candy bars. Yeah.
And you have 2 kids here in
I have
Park
2
City.
kids, yeah.
That you've been raising.
Yeah.
And your husband is also an Olympian.
I know. That's
a
tough.
lot of pressure.
It's tough.
Your kids they're into sports. How do you balance that? Like, because it's hard I'm sure that there's going to be some sort of Yahoo that's going to go up to your kids and be like, oh,
There've been a lot of Yahoos. Yeah.
That would make me get so fired up. And I'm a pretty easygoing person, but when it comes to my kids, I go full claws out mama bear.
Yeah. My kids have found their way, right? You have to let them find their way and their response to that. It is classic growing up. What are you going to be? A swimmer or a skier? A swimmer or a skier? And they're like,
I'm 7.
Just kind of want to like play on the playground for a while. Is that cool, ma'am? I just want to slide down, have fun. Yeah, I will be very honest. There's another Olympic, like the greatest butterflyer in the history of our sport lives in town part-time as well. Her name is Mary T. Maher. She was known as Madam Butterfly. She held the world record in my event, the 200 butterfly, for the longest time. And I remember hiking with her one day and saying, I really don't wish athletic greatness on my kids. And she was just floored that I would say that, in a very funny way. We had this really nice conversation about athletic greatness. And, I think that's why we moved away and we lived abroad. Everyone said, you're not going to do it. Your kids will be too involved in sports. You're not going to want to take them out. And Eric and I are like, what? I don't know. I don't think so. And so we did it and sort of bucked the system. I'd love to raise Renaissance kids that have a sense of culture and the reason why that next thing is on their list to check off of things to do in their life. And they have a connection to that why. My kids love sport. I couldn't take it out of them. Sky loves rugby and she would love to play rugby, but she has a kindness and a sweetness to her fierceness, which I think will serve her really well being on a team and then further in life. And Spider loves ski racing. So he wants to do that brutal sport of yours where a rock in your course can ruin your day. And yeah, it's hard to be the mom of a ski racer. I think that's one of the hardest sports to sit on the sidelines and cheer for. So, but I love my kids so much. I learn so much from them. There's so many stories I could tell you, Kaylin. I mean, we could be on this podcast forever.
We'll have to have you back because we have so many similarities in that I can see in your face how much you just enjoy them. Mm-hmm. And what I always say is the most fun, and my kids are 1 and 3, 1.5, 3.5. And the most fun thing is getting to know them because it's baked in. I can nurture, there's things I can encourage and discourage, but who they are is who they are. And my daughter, she's got some big Kaylin energy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of me in her, which is fun, but she's her own person. And it's so much fun to help be a guide, but also, like you said, it's really up to them.
And it is so damn frustrating at times. I mean, she is a senior in high school. And if anybody has gone through that application process for college and the gentle reminders on due dates for different things and this and that, and you're like, God, I don't want to be a helicopter mom, but I'd really love for you to nail that January 1 due date for all your applications. How are we doing? And here's what she always says. She'll get frustrated with me. Mom, I have it. I've already done them. And I'm like, oh my God, you have? Oh, thank God. And I think back and I'm like, wow, all right. Back off, Summer.
You did something right.
Well, I'm not taking credit on that at all. Our kids are, our DNA, but they're incredibly different from us, right? And my daughter likes to pack for a trip the morning we leave. It drives me crazy, but that's the way she rolls, and I let her do it. And the funny question that I get all the time is, how has being an Olympian helped you become a better parent? And I'm like, oh, it has not. It hasn't. There's nothing about my perfectionist attitude, my type A personality that I kind of had to be as a swimmer. We train so many hours. There is no such thing as free time.
Or free skiing. It's not like you're like, I'm gonna go do some lap. Like in skiing, you can be like, you know what? I just need an afternoon to go free ski. So you're gonna be like, I'm gonna go do elementary backstroke for fun.
No, it doesn't. We have 1 week off a year and that's it. So that mentality it didn't play well for being, a guide in this life. I can reprimand them for doing things wrong and all this kind of stuff. But the classic is Spider would always say to me, Mom, stop going, because he'd do all these scary things. And I didn't do that. So I had to leave the skate park or leave. I was just looking at a video of him rollerblading down something scary. And both Eric and he look at me and they're like, you need to leave because we're going to do this and we can't have you gasping every 2 seconds. So yeah, they're different than us, Kaylin, and it's beautiful, and shouldn't they be?
Yeah, because they help us change and grow, and I think that's amazing. And it's fun that you're still in the journey, but your kids their own people now, and you have to like let them. I think one of the hardest things, and I do think it's funny when people think that because you're an Olympian, you'd be good at something else that's so different, so vastly different. And that I always find that really hilarious. Yeah. But also letting them fail. Like that's something that I'm already starting to read books about, because it's just there's part of your heart is outside your body. That idiom or that adage is so true. And it's just, it is just such a fun experience. And I can see that you're still enjoying it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it is frustrating. I remember the most frustrating thing about young parenthood was like Sky would get really frustrated by her socks. If her socks didn't fit right, if it had the crease in the wrong place, and it was like a full meltdown, and I'd have like a little bit of anxiety leading into like her putting her socks on. Like, can we please just put the socks on? Is it going to work out okay? Is everything going to be all right? And then as they get older, that multiplies, and it becomes, hey, can you please try to be home at 10:30? It's a school night, and drive safely on the roads. They're icy. And, what a brilliant thing to be raised in a snow town like this, where she'll have, the training of driving in snow, the training of living in a resort town where for a good chunk of the season, there's hardly anyone here, but then the whole world descends upon it for 2 weeks in January. And the training of patience of it all. That's been an incredible journey for kids that are born and raised in Park City.
You are a Park City local. You travel the world. You're still doing so many cool things. We'll see you you'll be in Paris. We'll be looking for different things. We'll be trying to spot you here and there. Yeah. From all the things that you have experienced, what is your true north in your internal compass?
Authenticity. I think if you're authentic in every authentic parenting, authentic partnership, right? I'll be over in Paris working with different partners. So things that are true to who you are, and authentic relationships. I mean, I don't just dive into my relationships. As we've said, I'm tight with those relationships. And so authenticity on television. So we talked about that, right? The greatest advice I got was from my dad, just be yourself. And then I thought, God, it would be so much harder to be somebody else. This is who I am. So that's what we do, Kaylin. We just show up and we try to be who we are and be curious, but authentic.
And ever-changing and dynamic. Yeah. Thank you so much, Summer, for taking the time and helping us understand a little bit of what it is to be a completely evolving human, from champion to mother to whatever your next phase is going to be. And thank you guys so much for listening. This has been OverHerd at Deer Valley. We'll see you on the slopes. Trip. Oh, that's funny.
Might say road trip.
Don't trip.
Don't trip.